Welcome to Conversations for Our Times, podcast 31. This is the Grand Solar Minimum mini series part 5. Welcome everybody. It has been a while since we've done a podcast. You wouldn't believe the trouble that we are having. We are really enjoying the challenges, but we've had issues recording. And we found another way, and we're going to continue with the Grand Solar Minimum mini series because we're really excited about talking about this controversial subject. And I'm pleased to say that we've had a lot of views with the Grand Solar Minimum because it is very important. It's a very important subject in terms of self-sufficiency and learning about the sun. This is connected. This podcast is going to be connected to the Grand Solar Minimum, but we are going to talk about the eclipse, what happened a month ago, because I think it's all tied together. It's all connected anyway. Again, this subject of the eclipse has been very, very controversial, and me and John are going to discuss this. Of course, the Truth and Freedom movement have gone pretty hard in terms of it all being controlled. We're going to look at it at a different point of view and a different angle, and we're going to bring something else into it. It is connected to the Grand Solar Minimum, so we're going to go into that. I'm not going to discredit anyone else what they think it was happening. I treated it as an important event for me personally, and I'm going to go into all of that. So I'm just going to welcome John. John, how you doing, mate?
I'm good, thanks, George. Yeah, great intro there, mate.
Thank you.
Wow, yeah. I mean, our current times are pretty crazy, right? We really are. I mean, I'm definitely going through so much transformation, and I really believe this is all connected to the astral bodies that so few of us pay attention to, And Grand Solar Minimum, I mean, it is a controversial subject, although most people that believe in the model of the sun and the earth and the planets do accept that even these agencies such as NOAA and NASA accept that the sun has an effect on the planet, but because of the global warming narrative, there has been a lot of speculation cast over the subject of Grand Solar Minimum, and some people don't think we're in one. I think these are all semantics, and really what we need to do is observe what is actually happening on the planet. And when we're having such erratic weather, temperature changes, increased hail, volcanic eruptions like Roang in Java, one of the biggest volcanoes in Java, just went off, and its ash cloud went up to 60,000 feet. And we had Honga Tonga that went off in 2021, I believe, which put about 10% of the current water vapor in the atmosphere. So, the earth is such a dynamic organism that there's no way that a body like the sun, which is so powerful, and without the sun, right, where would we be? The earth is in this beautiful position that it's just in the Goldilocks zone for us to not be too cold and not be too hot. And there are still these extreme temperature variations on the planet, even without what's going on at this time. So I think, in order to accept Grand Solar Minimum, there has to be a degree of um, accepting that the world just adapts to everything. And we've been through these changes before. We've had extreme heat. If you go back 2 million years, you're looking at this kind of up and down graph where the planet goes through warm periods, it goes through cold periods, it goes through interglacial periods, it goes through glacial periods. And grand solar minimum is part of that happening. But what obviously we're here to talk about today is the recent solar eclipse, which happened on the 8th of April, I believe. So this is also part of the cycles that our planet experiences and we experience. And our ancestors paid so much attention to this. And I think the reason for so much confusion is because we're so disconnected from these cycles. So I know you've done quite a bit of research on it, George. So it'd be great if you could share with the audience what you've been researching.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is what we've got to take into consideration, that we are getting back into the cycles of things, and we are learning those cycles, and we're understanding more of what is happening astrologically. The ancients knew it. We are learning again. We have to learn again, and we must respect those in the past that knew what was happening, and knew the cycles, and knew everything was to do with the sun. It gives us light, it gives us life, it gives us everything. And that's why it's been so, the sun has been revered. And that's why in these ancient texts, they are talking about the sun. It's all astrotheology in the Holy Scriptures. But yeah, I'm just going to lay down some foundations. I'm not saying any of the listeners don't understand what eclipses are. Just going to give the basic outline of the eclipses, so it's a good foundation for us to go into this podcast. So there are two types of eclipses. You've got the lunar and the solar. And during a lunar eclipse, the Earth's shadow obscures the moon. And during a solar eclipse, the moon blocks the sun from view. Okay, so we're talking about a syzygy. This is what they call it, a syzygy, when three celestial objects are lined up in a row, like the sun, Earth, and the moon, for a lunar eclipse. So, of course, I've looked into it etymologically, because you have to, from the late Latin syzygia, right? It means conjunction, and from ancient Greek syzygia, which means yoke, pair, union. And this is what I've been talking about. I've been banging on about the self-union for years now. Uni meaning one. On is an ancient Egyptian city. They believed that that was the center of sun worship. So on is another word for light. This is why you walk into a room and you turn the light on. Okay, it's all symbology, all allegorical, and all astrological. We must be in the rhythm of the earth and the stars. So going back into it, so the order that they line up in is important. It's very important, because that is what actually determines what kind of eclipse we are going to have. So there are three types of lunar eclipses. You've got the total, you've got the partial, you've got the penumbral. You can just look up these in greater details, but I'll just go into a little bit. The lunar eclipse happens at night. So when the lunar eclipses happen, the Earth is between the sun and the moon, and they are in alignment together, and the Earth is stopping the sun's light from hitting the moon. Okay, so there are four types of solar eclipses. You've got total, partial, hybrid, and annular. And again, just have a read through. I'll just go into a little bit, but if you want more information, the type of eclipses that people get to see depends on how the moon aligns with the Earth and the Sun. And the distance between these three objects is very, very important. Okay, so they only happen during the day. So what has just happened with this eclipse? The moon passed completely passed between the sun and the moon completely, right, blocking our view of the sun as it passed. So a total solar eclipse, which is what it was, because the moon completely blocked the light of the sun. And these events are very rare and can only be viewed in specific areas on the Earth from our point of view, depending where we are, for short periods of time. So it creates like a circular shadow on the small part of the Earth. And that's where you get the total eclipse. And you'll see it depending where you are on the Earth. So the partial eclipse is obviously when the moon is not exactly aligned with the Earth and Sun, so only partially obscuring the sun. And it looks like the moon is eating the sun. It's very, very interesting. But an annular solar eclipse is when the moon passes between the sun and the Earth, but the moon isn't as close as the sun, like in a total solar eclipse. So you can see more of the sun. So with this annularity, you can see the moon as a dark disk, which looks like it is on top of a larger bright disk, the sun. So then you get like an image which is like a ring of fire. It's just beautiful when these things happen. And when you get to witness things like this, it's a very important time. It's a time where you don't want others to be harvesting energy. You want this energy, so you align with it and you take in that power. It's so important, and I did something different, which I will go into a little bit later. I wanted to align with what was happening with this eclipse. And that's what it's all about. It's about alignment. Alignment is mind. Align your mind. That's the whole point of being one. Yeah. So in most calendar years, there are 2 lunar eclipses, and in some years 1 or 3 or none may occur. And then the solar eclipses occur 2 to 5 times a year, 5 being really exceptional. I think the last time there was 5 was 1935. Okay, and there apparently won't be another 5 until 2206. So the UK's last total solar eclipse, which I do vaguely remember, occurred in 1999. I was too young to appreciate this. I was in my 20s. No, I don't even think I was in my 20s. I think I was 17. I was too young to appreciate it. I didn't know where I was in this world. But lots of people flocked to Devon and Cornwall. It was a major event, which was the only place in the UK where people could witness this event in its totality. So, yeah, these events are very, very important moments in time, John. I'm sure you'll agree.
Yeah, George. Thanks for all that. I mean, it's great kind of clarification, and I'm sure people would kind of appreciate that. It's really interesting that the Earth and the Moon are in perfect proportion to each other, so these events can actually happen. And I know there's people out there that have their own interpretation of what the sun and moon actually are. However, I think it's so beautiful that we can see this relationship. And I wonder, the geometry of the solar system, it's so perfectly designed. In my opinion, humans couldn't design this. It has to be the work of nature. So it's a beautiful thing. And I think, when these events are happening, there is a huge shift in energy. And I know, when that, when we had the solar eclipse, although we couldn't see it here in the UK, I definitely felt something, and I think the more and more you're in tune with nature and therefore in tune with yourself, the more you actually are aware of how these celestial events actually affect us. I want to kind of just throw a thing in here that, Pluto just went retrograde. I don't know a great deal about astrology, but I've been following it for a while. And Pluto went retrograde on the 2nd of May. And man, I mean, it was spot on for how I was feeling. I literally went within myself and really, hit a really difficult couple of days. And I realized why it was. I realized it's because I had to reflect and I had to transform, and I've been procrastinating quite a lot over the last 6 months about a project I'm involved in. And, when you're aware of these things and you become the observer rather than kind of, being too emotionally attached to your subjective experience, you can really see, these macrocosmic bodies working on you. And this isn't mumbo jumbo. We're talking about electrically, magnetically charged, huge celestial bodies. So there's no doubt they're having an effect. But you can really feel it. I can really feel it, and everyone's different. So these events are so beautiful, and I think when we, as I said, when we detach ourselves from, you know, how it makes us feel, we can really kind of understand this astrotheology, and that actually most religions were based on these, you know, the gods in the sky, you know. So yeah, it's really beautiful, man. And I know you kind of appreciate this spiritual aspect to it as well.
Yeah, definitely, John. I really, really do. And it's about alignment. The way that I see it, the heavens and the kingdom is always within. And this is the key thing. I mean, a lot of people do struggle with retrogrades. They really, really do. And I know that you did. You had a challenging time. I I've gone to one extreme to another. When a couple of years ago, we both weren't really doing very well, and it felt like every day was retrograde. And I always talk about where we want to live in what part of the brain. You either want to live in the cerebrum or you want to live in the cerebellum, the higher mind versus the lower mind. And this is key. When retrogrades happen, you want to be more balanced. You want to aim to be more balanced. You want to be living in line with natural law, and the principle of rhythm. More actively trying to do things that balance your brain and body, because things will come up. Things will come up for you. But I'd never notice a retrograde, to be honest, because most of the time I'm very, very balanced and very well happy and balanced, because I've understood, I've understood a lot to do with the brain and the astrological side to it. I do have, will have bad days, and I've only got a few issues in life in general. It's just what we were talking about the other day, John. Just my little problems, which is not even big problems. They're just everyday little worries. But I don't suffer from these things anymore because I have dealt with a lot of this stuff, and I'm astrologically aligning with, I'm physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually aligning with these stars. And it makes a massive, massive difference. So with all that doom and gloom surrounding the total solar eclipse, I chose to see it differently, because whatever the illusionists were planning or whatever what was going on, what can you do about it? I'll tell you what you can do about it. You could do what I did. Now, I chose to look at it as a beautiful astrological event when the moon dances around the sun with its loving energy, romancing energy, and becoming one. You know, the union that I was talking about, creating love as we watch from the earth, the sun, the moon, and the earth aligning together as one. You know, all of what is happening in the so-called outside world, I always call it the so-called outside world, because the world is within you. It's just set out that way. The creator, you know, people can say you live in a matrix, you live in a computer program. However it is, the creator, and you can say whoever created the matrix or whatever you want to do, I see it as the creator making it this way, the illusion of separation. So we get to have our lessons in life, and we learn and grow and evolve from it. But I don't see anything outside of me, really outside. It's all within, and it's happening within me. So it's like the King Solomon's temple is in my brain. It literally means balancing the divine feminine and sacred masculine to one energy in your brain. I've gone deep into this in my podcast. You can catch it on Unveiling the Truth. You know, so I see it as the sun penetrating its life force through the moon, bringing the light to both brain hemispheres. And when you do that, you're balancing the brain and allowing that light to travel to the heart, which is an anagram of the earth. None of this is by accident. No accidents happening, like you said before in the earlier part of this podcast, John. There's an intelligence here, yeah, that's created absolutely everything, which in my mind's eye resembles the cross, the light penetrating the left, the right side, left and right brain hemispheres, and then you've got the cerebrum, and that light comes down to your heart. It resembles a cross, yeah? And we know where that story comes from. So all the stars and constellations, the sun and the moon are the heavens above that are inside of us, giving us the opportunity to have alignment within ourselves, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. I can even break those words down. You know, in the word mentally, emotionally, and physically and spiritually, you've got the word all in that, in all of them. All means one. That's it, period. There's always the words that we speak are alluding to this oneness that I can go on and on with the words that we speak. But at this time of the event, I was coming back from a Buddha retreat. It was amazing, which we're going to do a podcast on it when I get a bit more time. It was amazing. And I was coming back, and I was in autophagy because I was doing no food, no water, and I did feel rough, and I was on the coach, so I couldn't see the eclipse from where I was, but I could certainly feel it. And I was doing the no food, no water, and I didn't want any food in my body to block this alignment. So unfortunately, I didn't see the event, but I knew it was happening all inside of me, you know, and I was hoping to feel it, and I did. And I just see it as a beautiful allegorical story playing out in life. You know, I, for one, I'm so grateful I can learn these things and apply it into my life. And I allow the sun's life force and the emotions of the moon to balance me, period. That's it, with my heart. As they console me, I will break down the word console. I looked at it and I contemplated on it. I look to this word console. You break that down. C, the letter C, on, I talked about on, and then soul, SOLE. So the letter C means like you're seeing with your eyes, but really it's your mind's eye. And then on, the ancient Egyptian city, they believed that was a center of sun worship. And then soul, SOLE, is really SOUL. And that is alone. And then you spell alone, it's ALONE. It alludes to all one. So console actually means to see the light turn on when you make your soul one. And when I looked at that, I can't remember when I did that, maybe about a year ago, looked at that word, a nice little bell went off for me, because you can't make this up. There is an intelligence there, and we are cracking these codes to find out what we've got to do. And I'm doing it. I'm applying it with my life. So that's how I spent the eclipse. And yeah, I definitely felt it, and it was empowering.
Yeah, nice one, George. Um, it's it's quite phenomenal, isn't it? You know, the breakthroughs that we can have when we just let go. You know, let go of what we think we know. And the thing is, there's always something bigger. You know, we can always go deeper, or we can expand more. And this is what I'm learning. You know, that this isn't just to do with what we can see in the skies. But as you know, look, people have been speaking about this for millennia. You know, this the microcosm is the macrocosm, and thousands of years ago, it was just spiritual leaders that were talking about this. But now you have theoretical physicists proposing. So for instance, there's a guy called Nassim Haramein, and he talks about that the energy of the whole energy of the universe is contained within a Planck, which is like one of the smallest energy units of energy that they've studied. The Buddha said that the entire universe of phenomena is contained within one moment of life. And for most people, that's incomprehensible, because you can't work it out with your logic. You can't work it out. What you can do is you can feel it, like you were talking about, George. And this is the experience that we have, right? It's very, we've become such a reductionist society that we think that we can calculate everything that's going to happen, and we think that we can assess and examine things that are separated. So when we put something in isolation, we think that we can study everything about that, but it's impossible. Because, as the Buddha said, this dependent origination is nothing can be dependent or independent in and of itself. There has to be a relationship with something else. So these relationships, within our body and with the stars are all exactly the same thing, as you said. And, you don't have to believe us. There's thousands of scientific papers out there that talk about this. It's just that where they come from is a very different perspective than what our ancestors were talking about thousands of years ago. So the whole subject is absolutely fascinating. And, myself and George are on a real kind of mission to get this stuff out there. And we're not saying that we're right or we know everything or it's the only thing, the only way to see things. Why we're really doing this is because we want people to connect to themselves and to nature, because this is how you actually move towards becoming enlightened about yourself, and about the world that we live in. Otherwise, we're just going to be influenced by everything around us. And, I know when I'm deeply connected to nature, when I'm chanting really well and I'm focused and I'm meditating and I'm grounding and I'm planting, sowing my seeds and transplanting my plants out into the soil, or I'm dancing, or making music, that is connection. That's the force of the universe working through you. So it's a beautiful thing, George.
Most definitely, John. It is a beautiful thing, and it's a very interesting times that we face, and we must do what we can to balance ourselves out, because it's all to do with balance. There's so many words in the words that I can go into, but just check them out on my podcast. It's all about balancing. It's about, the ancients knew it. The ancients had this knowledge. It got abused, and the knowledge of natural law and human consciousness and astrology, they understood it. They understood it very, very well. We have to learn this again, because it will free us. That's the whole point of doing it. It is a lot of work. I'm not going to lie to anyone. I struggle with time. I have to work and trying to fit all this in and learn this and apply. I'm doing very well. I just wish I had more time to learn it. But it's very, very important to learn this stuff, because it will ultimately free us. Another thing I wanted to say, I understand people that I do understand about geoengineering. I do understand about HARP technology. We've got to understand, right, that the erratic weather that we've been having cannot only be down to the technology that the government have. I really have to really emphasize the fact there have been massive earthquakes and massive volcanic eruptions, tsunamis in the past, massive storms that was way before any technology that the government have. They do have unbelievable technology, but it is nature as well. Okay, nothing will ever be bigger than nature, and if we try and challenge nature, well, we're going to lose, right? And it's always the sun is the main driver, because you've got to go back thousands of years, you've got to go back millions of years, and we can check these out. We've got the data, we've got millions of years of proxy data. We can see the weather was brutal. We can look at ice ages, and we're gonna go into all of that. And the other thing I wanted to say, I cannot, and I'm aware of the time, John, I'm just going to quickly say this. There was a comment left on my YouTube channel. I cannot respond to them. I cannot. For some reason, I haven't got my settings correct, and I'm not able to do it. And there was somebody saying about we're not in a grand solar minimum because the sunspot count is 200. Okay, so let me just quickly explain. That's not a high number of sunspots, and that's not a low number of sunspots. So we are in the maximum right now. So the sun is going to come alive at this point. And this is what we've talked about, solar flares, CMEs. We have to raise the awareness about the grid and what could happen. We don't know how bad it's going to get until we are at the end of the grand solar minimum. I wasn't really particularly worried about cycle 25. I'm more concerned about cycle 26 and 27, okay, because it is going down, and we just got to observe. observe, this is coupled by what's happening with regards to the grand solar minimum, the event that's happened during this event, this whole eclipse has happened during a grand solar minimum. This is coupled by earthquakes, volcanoes, a weakening magnetosphere, the magnetic excursion that is happening. But we haven't gone into any of that. We are going to go into all of that and the ocean cycles as well. There's so many things that affect and at play here. We want to talk about it, okay? Which we're going to do in a later podcast. Whilst all of this is happening, we need to aim for that balance, and we need to do our own research and suss it out ourselves. We've been watching the sunspot count from Diamond, from Oppenheimer Ranch Project, magnetic reversals, Adapt 30, and Ice Age Farmer. We've been looking at them for a good few years. Follow their channel, look back at their old videos, and they'll show you all of this information. So I wanted to just point out that. So we're just preparing people, we're encouraging people to look at the data that we're talking about, read the books, follow the YouTube channels, and make up your own mind. The most important thing is self-sufficiency and preparing just in case it gets bad, John.
Yeah, George, summarise, mate. I think, as you said right at the end, look, I would rather it be getting warm than it be getting cold. Not many people like the cold. But this isn't about catastrophizing anything. This is about getting to the truth. And once we understand how these things work, what is next? Surely it's adaptation, right? And that is the important thing, you know, and my mission for the last year, you know, once I got myself into the right head and heart space, was to provide solutions. This is why I'm encouraging people to grow food and become self-sufficient. This is why I'm launching my regenerative co-creators course in October, because I believe, as our ancestors proved, that we can get through anything as long as we adapt, we realize how powerful we are, and we unite with our community. So thank you very much, everyone. That's the end of this week's podcast. We will be back for more. And I hope you're enjoying the sunshine.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you.